Very. Still arriving. You're still on mute. Stacy, welcome.
Okay. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays. How shall we celebrate?
This really feels like time of endings. Okay, Barry's going to reboot.
He can't unmet. Okay, Barry.
Can't spell either. So it's fat fingers.
So how is it an ending, Stace?
I see it around. I mean, for me personally, you know, I've had a couple of endings, but even around me, I see people moving, you know, people closing down their storage facilities. I mean, I don't imagine it's just around me. Relationships ending. Yeah, but it feels like right in time for the new year and the new beginning. So it feels good.
Life is cycles, right?
Right. And this one just feels more distinct than usually.
Well, that's part of my cycle. I just got my winter tires put on yesterday.
Yay.
But that's foreign for, let's see, you're in New York. So do you actually, no, you're not in New York anymore, are you?
I am in New York.
Oh, you are in
I
New
am
York.
in New York.
So
I
you don't own a
sold place.
vehicle, right? New Yorkers
Of
don't own
course.
vehicles, right?
No, I'm not in the city, and I would go crazy without a vehicle.
Oh, okay.
But I have an SUV, so I don't change my tires. If that's where you were getting to.
Well, I have an SUV too, but I just put snow tires on mine. My son was in New York for almost 2 years, and he lived in the
Brooklyn.
South Brooklyn, so just always went with public transit, so didn't have a vehicle.
No, where I live public, it's not so easy. Although where I live now, I can get the bus right across the street. So where I live now, I actually could live without a vehicle. And I love the fact that I don't have to get into it every day. But I wouldn't be caught without a car.
So how far out of the urban downtown New York are you?
20 minutes.
Okay.
Right, but over a bridge. You have to go over the bridge.
And is traffic always stop and go, or is it pretty smooth all the time?
I mean, I don't go over the bridge that much but it depends. It's all about time of day.
Mhm.
And it's not as bad as I used to teach in the city and I used to have to get up really early because of rush hour. But now, like the Tappan Zee Bridge, the Mario Cuomo Bridge, whatever you want to call it, I
Mhm.
posted a beautiful picture. I don't know if you got to look on my page. It was gorgeous. One of the people in my town had shared it. And it was just so beautiful of the bridge lit up with the full moon right in the middle.
Hmm.
But now, so now the lanes, it's much wider. So I don't think there's as much traffic, at least not over the bridge. You looking for my picture?
I was just gonna go check it while we're waiting.
It truly is beautiful. I don't post many, I don't usually post pictures.
Mhm.
Well, sometimes I do, but that was amazing.
Cool. I saw my son posted a picture. My son Nick took a 7 o'clock p.m. flight last night to go visit Colombia. He's in Medellin right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Man, my machine is slow today.
Mm. You haven't gotten one of the new, what is it, a new Mac or something that I hear? I hear you, you geeky types talking about.
Now, a year or two ago, I bought a really fast mini Intel 64 gig machine, but I got too much stuff running on it right now. Over time, machines all slow down.
My last one I had for a really long time, like probably, but it was really good when it was bought, but it was until it fell and the screen broke. It was like an all-in-one kind of deal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, the one with all the blue lights. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes. Isn't that
Yeah,
beautiful?
that's pretty cool.
Purple. Was it purple or blue? I don't remember.
It looks blue here.
Might be blue.
Yeah. And the moon looks very yellow.
Yes. It was so beautiful.
Yeah. Well, since
My
Barry's on
camera.
what?
Since Barry's not on.
I was saying, since Barry's using one of his typical 40-year-old computers, it might take him, 10 minutes to reboot. Oh, wait, is this your daughter or is that you? Oh, that's you.
Lookalike. So
That's you a long time ago.
what was it? Let me see.
That's you with your arm around another woman. And Lisa Calandrio Wenzel.
It wasn't a long time ago then. I only know her for a couple of years, but thanks.
All right. So I didn't choose to do a typical, notes-based GCC discussion today. I just thought I'd just come here, see who showed up, see how we want to celebrate. And if it's just the two or three of us.
Well, Heiner's asking if we're meeting. So let me figure out how to answer him, because my screen is so, I got the notification, but now I lost you. Okay, hold on a minute. Heiner. Okay. Oh, you did it for me. Okay, let's find you again. Okay. So my hair is sopping wet right now. You probably can't tell.
Well, then my hair.
Part of me wants to get up and dry it. Why is he asking where? In the usual. I'll see if I can.
Heider is funny at times.
Okay, let's see.
Every other Saturday, he's got the right link.
More forward. think I sent it. Oops. So, wait, I sent the wrong thing. Wait. Oh. Okay, that's what I meant to send. So let me remove this. How do I delete this? Okay. You haven't sent your message. Okay. So you're making a big dinner tonight, I hear?
Yeah, in fact, it's prime rib.
Yum.
I got a 5-pound rib roast.
That sounds good.
I mean, I'm not smoking it. I got somebody else smoking it.
Oh, I've never smoked it.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. You know what a smoke ring is?
What a smoke ring is?
Yes.
Like when you blow smoke rings? Like
No. When you smoke at low temperatures for a
Mhm.
very long time, then, you know, when you slice the meat, the outside of it, closest to the surface, has a smoky ring because that's where the smoke has penetrated into the meat.
Oh, like a pastrami.
Yeah, that's the smoke ring. And then you get the really, you know, what is it, medium rare internal with a smoke ring. Oh, that's perfect. But
Well, I'm sure you'll be posting pictures.
smoking like a barbaric meat eater, unevolved meat eater. But that's what is ahead to later today. What about you?
I'm going over, what, say it again?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was invited to a friend's, so I'll be eating dinner there.
Ah, yes. There's
Heiner is here. Merry Christmas, Heiner. You're on mute.
Heiner. Heiner. Fröhliche Weihnachten.
Can you hear? Can you hear us?
Can you hear us, Heiner?
Do a thumbs up, Heiner, if you could hear us. He can't hear us.
Kannst du uns hören? Boy, that was horrible. Heiner, can you hear us?
Yeah, he can't. Sam, maybe we should just move our lips and not say anything.
Wie die Schüler so in der ganzen Generation waren. Und es ist ziemlich gut.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Background, yeah.
We can hear you now, Heiner. Yes. Heiner, what's going on later today? You always have 17 things going on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
And now.
Well, I was on too many machines and I always have this old link to the barn raising room and it's not working. And now, thanks to Stacy, I'm now with you. Merry Christmas.
That's
Merry
curious,
Christmas.
because the barn raising link hasn't changed for like what, 3 years or so, right? I don't know what link you've got.
I don't know, but since you brought that up, so I guess I was either reading something or listening to something that you recorded in the past, where you mentioned that the Saturday and Sunday's calls were on your Zoom account.
A long time ago, yes. Now only the Saturday one is.
Oh,
The
got
Sunday
changed at some
one,
point.
the Sunday one, Doug took over, so he put it on his account.
I didn't realize. Okay.
And then
'Cause I
he
was-
also did Fridays. He also did Thursdays. So I only have Saturdays right now.
Got it. Got it. And do
Otherwise,
you-
I would post them.
Well, that was going to be my question. Do you also have it with separate audio files?
When I record locally, yes. And so each of the speakers is separately recorded. So I have each of those individual files. But when it gets put into a single video, all of that's mashed together and then we lose the speaker identification. However, today, I have actually just enabled live transcript, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. So I think that is going to be speaker identified. So at the end of it, I'll try and save it. And I think that will be a speaker identified live transcript.
Okay, and but just so that I'm clear, because I'm going to be giving this information to somebody else, without the live transcription enabled, which I guess you need a paid account for. That would be my guess.
I don't know. I have a paid account. I could enable it. I think it's a relatively new feature. So I don't know if it's in a free level or not.
Okay, well, let's just say you can't. By recording it to your local machine, that will also create separate audio files?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Good to know.
If you record to the cloud, then no, you don't get those separate audio files if you record to the cloud.
Okay, it's good to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I just recently discovered this live transcript capability because, you know, once you've been on it for a while, you assume that, you know how to use it, but Zoom doesn't do a great job informing me about new features. So I just discovered it. Not like other companies that constantly are in your face. Do this, do this, do this.
I'm a very lazy tech person. I only look for something if I need it. If I don't need it, if it's good enough. There he is.
There's Barry. So Heiner, what else is going on today? Any more meetings, any more visitors, any more celebrations?
No, just a few family calls and friends. And I'm arranging my extra studio here because in my studio behind me, it was too little space. But here, you see, I can roam around.
Mm-hmm.
So you see, moving, not getting, how do you say, fixed and tired, but up and running.
Mm-hmm. All right.
And my
Barry.
kids and grandkids are far away.
Ah.
So I'm here in my little winter hideaway.
How many grandkids do you have?
4 grandsons.
How old? Roughly. No, ages, their age, their age.
Oh, between 17 and 5.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yes, my kids started late with getting children, but I started early.
And welcome back, Barry.
Okay, I hope you hear me now.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Are you on one of those 40-year-old machines that takes about 10 minutes to boot?
It's a 2006 Mac Pro. I don't know if it was hardware, software. I had trouble getting it to reboot, and then I ended up running a Zoom update. So I don't really know what fixed it, but I may have to do some maintenance checking to see if I have a hardware issue, a software issue. I don't know what the problem was.
Anyway, just so you noticed, I have turned on live transcript. So at the bottom of your screen is a voice to text. We'll see how useful it is. So I think at the end, it'll actually be savable. And I was just mentioning to Stacy, I think it is also speaker identified. So that'll be handy. Anyway, I'm not going to do a traditional here on my notes for Saturday barn raising. I just thought I'd just get on for this Christmas day and see what people wanted to talk about, or whether he wanted to celebrate, or what he wanted to vent or kvetch, or what.
Barry wants to talk about the telescope.
Yeah, I was up early enough to watch the live feed from NASA of the launch. And boy, it was fabulous. I wasn't this excited since we landed on the moon watching the episode. It was really pretty amazing. And of course, what they've done is they've launched it. It's now en route to its L2 orbit, and they have to unfold this whole, folded up mechanism, which is going to, I guess, take days or what. I'm not sure how long it's going to take, but so.
You know how precise they actually have to control the entire surface
Yeah,
of the telescope just to be able to get the degree of accuracy and precision they want? I mean,
Yeah.
to the extent that they have little microcontrollers that actually adjust many, many points on the actual mirror itself.
Yeah.
Just to get the reflection to actually be correct.
each of the mirrors is adjustable, so they can first they get each mirror, to calibrated, and then they have to jointly do them to get how 16 or I forget how many of them there are.
After it gets thermally stable. again.
Right, because you end up listening, you end up feeling your own heat until you're cooled down. So
Yep.
its own heat would exceed the signal until it's totally cool, which I think is going to take like a month or something.
Yeah. It'll be a while before we get some astonishing pictures.
Yeah.
But it's probably the case. We're going to get some astonishing pictures.
Yeah, if nothing else goes wrong with it, or nothing goes wrong with it, then it'll be pretty amazing.
Well, I think what I have read, it will take about 6 or 8 months until they are fully operational. And I remember the problem with Hubble, when the term to Hubble was meaning to really make something awfully wrong. So they had to adjust the lenses and the optics and everything. So I'm just looking very much forward, and I didn't stay up so long or so early to watch that, because it's just the start of a record. Nothing more is happening, and it's a big show on television, and it will be a big fuss if it is not working.
Hubble, they ground the mirrors incorrectly. This one, the mirrors are, for each of the individual mirrors is slightly curved. So they had to grind each of the mirrors. I'm sure they checked that was right. And then each of the individual mirrors then is dynamically steerable. So they have to steer the whole array. But I think it'll be a long time before that they've confirmed that everything is working. Nothing went haywire.
Yeah. I don't know if I ever mentioned this, but I used to work on the Hubble way back decades ago.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And at that time, I think the surface of the mirror was actually built, I think, at Perkin-Elmer. And that's how I got to know a lot about the size and individual control and how finely they had to be tuned and calibrated, all of that. It's really remarkable to think that it can survive a multi-G blast into space.
Yeah.
And then relax into the right, shape. Relax, I mean that literally.
One of my housemates worked at Perkin-Elmer in New Jersey. I don't know if that was the same organization that did the mirror. They probably had more than one location.
Well, that was Hubble. I don't know who built the mirror for JWST.
You said Perkin-Elmer, right?
For Hubble.
Yeah, one of my housemates worked at Perkin-Elmer way back in the 1970s, I think it was. And I actually briefly worked on the International Space Station when they had a piece of the contract at MITRE when I worked there for the Earth to Ground data network. This is before they had settled on Ethernet protocols, or without all those protocols were still being reviewed. But by the time I got on board the company, their 3 months worth of funding terminated. So I didn't actually work on it for very long before they said, well, we hired you to work on that, but we no longer have that contract. Would you like to build some defense systems? I said, no, thanks. Don't want to build any weapon systems. Thanks a lot. And it's funny because in my letter of acceptance, I said, I'm looking forward to doing life-affirming applications of technology.
Like
That became a catchword there when I wrote that in my acceptance letter.
Yeah, well, saying that sometimes is career limiting at a defense contractor.
Well, I mean, I really didn't know what MITRE did because they didn't disclose it, but they said they had this NASA space station network project. I said, well, that sounds right up my alley. And I do communications networking. I'll do that. That's science and, non-military.
When
The
those
hard-
systems got, oh, sorry, go ahead, Stace.
It's kind of going to go to a values kind of conversation, but integrity is sometimes limiting. And
Oh, yeah.
that's the, I guess, the deal you make with yourself. I just wanted to say that.
That's also why not very many scientists end up going into politics. The most famous one is they wanted Einstein to become the first president of Israel. He turned him down. He probably knew enough about what, politics is like to know that this wouldn't suit him at all. And I can't stand politics.
By the way, that's in this country. In China, a lot of their politicians are engineering and science and STEM educated.
Yeah. But, after they finished that launch, I said, why aren't people like that running our government? They knew exactly what they were doing. They were dedicated, they were scientific, they had integrity, everybody worked together, and I go, this is the kind of people we need running the world.
Yeah, but those people are not well understood by the masses.
Yeah. Oh, that reminds me. It turns out that you and I are not connected on LinkedIn. I wanted to invite you to a conversation. I tried to invite you. I realized, somehow or other we never got connected. But Eugen and a few other people, and Heiner's in this conversation. In fact, it was related to this question you talked about last week about chaos and rules. It's all part of that same genre. I wanted to invite you to the conversation, but first we have to become connected. Although Heiner can invite you because you and Heiner are connected on LinkedIn.
I'm not difficult to find on LinkedIn.
I found you. That wasn't the problem. It's just that you have to go on and
just
accept
push
it.
connect and I'll probably respond.
I did yesterday, but
Oh,
Heiner knows what I'm talking about. That's that conversation that everybody wants to have a Zoom session on it someday in January.
I'll log in. I haven't logged in since yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, this is a long story. I just posted in this LinkedIn group. I'm also not happy with LinkedIn, same like with Facebook. It is such a linear list of someone telling something and me telling someone and you telling something, but we don't have a focused audience.
No.
The group evolved as a surprise to me. Somehow Eugen hijacked the contributors list of my birthday party, and he selected a few people and others were not included. So already that left some, how do you say, extra noise. And it is about who is part of the group, to whom is a message addressed. And the list of maybe 70 or 90 people is people who joined my birthday party within 36 hours. It is not the primary target group I would like to have. And then this Paul from Washington said, well, this is a group, I finally have this group, and finally the Joe Fix of Sundays is finally enlarged. And so this group is so diverse and not focused that everybody has his own agenda. Someone wants to establish his own ISSS group on mathematics and system sciences or whatever. And so with the topic of Einstein finally going to organizations, we have a very strange, how do you say, headline, because Einstein did everything to be not part of organizations and to just learn from Einstein's thinking to improve organizations. It's for me a much too small topic. Our Sunday groups is about the news sphere, the problems of the internet, the problems and issues of science and cultural sciences and integration, and not just what Eugen made out of this list of participants. So anyway, you can join, but I want to have it in a different format, in a different environment, really going to the spread think and not the group think or in think or bubble think of certain people with certain agendas. So Barry, you can invite everybody. It will be more and more chaotic.
I'm trying to invite Sam, but it still says that our connection is pending. So I can't invite him until he gets to be in my connected network on LinkedIn.
Is that true?
You can invite him. You two are already connected. I sent the invitation just a minute ago.
I just accepted, Barry. I just accepted.
You know, let me just see if it's, let me do an update. It might take a little while to.
This is interesting. I can also invite Stacy
Oh, yeah.
and Sam, and maybe
I'm
it works with me. But for me, it's only an indicator of who may invite and to whom a message is addressed.
I'm not on LinkedIn.
Deep into the issues of conversations.
Let me see if it
Who
works.
is excluded and included? You know, these old games.
All right, so I just sent the invitation to Sam for this. Is called Getting Einstein into Organization, a meme that I think Eugen started.
Yes, I was
and,
surprised and very surprised because we had sent to all participants the invitation and the concepts to get all this information about our ride with a bicycle to the climate summit in Glasgow. But everybody was exhilarated, and maybe Sam and Stacy, Barry was part of my birthday party.
I was there.
Yeah, I saw Stacy there.
Oh, Stacy, you were there too. So
Yes.
you have seen my invitation and my
No,
report from today.
I got an email from you. I didn't, with the recording. Yes, I didn't get a chance to watch it.
Okay, so only Sam is excluded. So the
Let me
most
check my
important
email.
guy is excluded. It's horrible.
What?
I think Stacy and I are not connected. Let me just see.
I'm not on LinkedIn.
Oh, that's
my
why I
name-
can't.
Yeah, my
That's why I
name
can't.
might be there from years ago when I was doing some recruiting, but I wouldn't even know how to sign on.
Yeah, I try to invite you to the same conversation, and it doesn't
Thank
even
you.
know you.
Thank
Doesn't
you
know
for
you.
telling me I was invited. That means a lot.
No, yeah, it doesn't find you on LinkedIn, so I can't invite you. Anyway, but it's mostly people who have enough math background to mention names like Pontryagin and Kalman Busey, and not have everybody run to the exits screaming in pain.
No, they're just tolerant as they are my friends. But in general, it is not this global interest group, this group who is discussing the news sphere and life science and culture and peace at the same time. And it's only very much this physicist and just mathematical oriented who jumped onto it. And so other people are already saying, I don't know these terms. Bye-bye.
Yeah. Well, see, that's kind of the frontier for me, because there's a very, very tiny population of applied mathematicians who even know, what you're talking about. If you say Pontryagin principle or GCC filter, and a lot of systems thinking, you can talk narrative about it, but people won't really understand it unless you can go into the underlying mathematics of a system model using mathematics that people not only have heard of, but are conversant with. I mean, even if you say, gravitational mechanics of Newton, you're going to get a lot of people say, well, I know what you're talking about, but I don't know the gravitational mechanics of Newton. And even if I did, I wouldn't be able to follow it. But it's like today's James Webb Telescope. They're going to park this thing in an L2 orbit, a Lagrange point. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm sure that of all the people on Facebook who know me, maybe 4 of them will have heard of Lagrange. And if I say a L2 Lagrange point, and you sort of need to understand what that means, I'm guessing that 4 people will say, yeah, I'm on board with that, Barry, and the rest of them are going to say, well, that's over my head. I don't need to know that.
People who read science fiction would at least know the word.
Yeah, you probably, I'm sure people have heard, especially since it's in the headlines today, people will see the L2 Lagrange, phrase, and they're going to say, well, that's jargon. I don't know. I don't need to know that. But actually, it's pretty fascinating.
Well, this is why I get amused whenever people say, I don't need science. I don't need calculus. I don't need algebra. I don't need math. They don't even.
It bothers me because you can spin a narrative in lieu of the math, but what happens is that you'll build a cult that's sort of like woo-woo because they don't know the math, and so you get a little cult. Some of the cults actually evolved to become religions. I mean, for a while, the Pythagoreans were a cult, and that's one of the very first math formulas you ever learn is the Pythagorean theorem, and actually that started out as a cult. And a lot of people will Pythagorean theorem on faith without really knowing why you should believe it or why it only applies to a flat surface. And if you're on a curved surface like the Earth, you can't actually get away with it. If it's a very big triangle on the surface of the globe, then it doesn't work. And so you end up with people who have heard of things and sort of even can recite the formula, but never really rely on it. Never don't really understand it.
Which is interesting because it's one of the proofs which has the most number. It's one of the theorems that has the most number of proofs.
Yeah, there are several presidents who have actually developed their own distinct proof of it. I think 3 presidents, something like that. 3 presidents have written proofs of the Pythagorean theorem. And it's not that hard to understand why it's true, but it's harder to understand why it's only true on a flat triangle on a flat paper, not a triangle. Oh, here's Kayla.
Hello.
Hey, Kayla.
Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Happy.
Christmas.
I was happy to see that thread that you guys are all on. I was up till 4 in the morning and I'm not showing my face until I've got the proper filters.
Are you talking about the email thread? I just recently was told of it.
Oh no, the
No.
messenger thread.
There's a messenger thread with me on it.
No,
In
with
the barn raising where we answered Heiner.
Oh, that one.
Well, yeah, Heiner wasn't sure we were even going to have a session today. I kind of assumed we wouldn't.
Me
But,
too.
But Stacy said, no, Stacy came back and said, no, there's a thread today. There's a Zoom.
Well, I put it on here just to see who would show, and there was no announcement that we were not going to have one. So,
But it is Christmas morning. I mean, that's a lot of things don't happen on a weekly basis that don't happen on Christmas morning.
yeah. Although I have to admit, I was brought up Asian, so Christmas was not part of my childhood, really. Not most of it.
Yeah.
Not a crucial part of it.
Christmas for me was usually in Miami Beach. That was my Christmas.
Wow. Well,
Just
Christmas was a big thing in my house too. So that's why I'm kind of making it a big thing with my kids. But we are waiting for my oldest to wake up so we can open gifts.
I have friends who were practicing Christians. They always invite me over for holidays, whether they're Christian holidays or secular holidays. So I was over there last night. They traditionally do the 7 fishes sacramental meal on
Love that.
Christmas Eve. We had eight choices of seafood last night. And then today they're going to do turkey for a conventional Christmas dinner. So I'm being overfed this weekend.
Yeah.
That's what
I
it's
love-
about.
And you're a willing participant, Barry.
Well, I've way cut down on my food intake as I age and become retired and don't burn it off. But I managed to partake of at least one or two bites of each of the 8 optional fishes. What's interesting though is, on Passover, you also eat symbolic food, but each one has a little story component that this item of food goes with this chapter of the story. They tell the story. And I mentioned last time, I said, you've got these 7 sacraments, but you don't actually tell a story that associates each sacrament with one of the fish and why it's that one fish and what it means. And in fact, the kids even had a little trouble recalling the list of the 7 sacraments. So, it's kind of funny to have a symbolic meal where you don't actually review what the symbols refer to.
I'm going to change the subject a little bit. I've been thinking about evolution, and I've been thinking about the human race evolving. And it struck my mind that, so many people are developing greater sense perception. And in being asked by different people to imagine a more beautiful existence, I keep imagining, what would it be like if we knew if somebody was being honest or dishonest? How would that change things? And I think it would be a wonderful thing. And that's sort of what I'm envisioning for our future, because I do see people becoming more focused on other than the 5 senses. So I'm throwing it out there because it's Christmas. And to me, it fits in.
Well, I mean, look at the James Webb Telescope. It's in the infrared. I mean, you can hold your hand up to feel heat, but you're not going to feel the heat of any galaxy if you hold your hand up. They had to put this thing way out in space and have it super cold so that the infrared heat from the galaxies could actually be detected and imaged. So yeah, I mean, one of the things of science is, I mean, you got over here your AM, FM radio. Those radio waves, we cannot detect them, with our own biology, maybe unless you got a bridge in your mouth or something, but in your teeth. But
no, but more to the point, to go back to what you were saying earlier about how scientists don't run for office.
right.
Imagine if you were a politician that couldn't lie, because people would sense that you were lying. Everything would change.
Well, a lot of people knew that Trump was lying, but it didn't seem to matter.
A lot of people don't care. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm going to disagree that I don't think a lot of people knew that Trump, I don't think people necessarily knew that Trump was lying. Maybe everybody in this Zoom call knew that. There are still
Convicted of
people,
fraud. How many was he convicted of fraud in his university and his
I
other
get that.
businesses?
Barry, there are still people that believe him when he says he won the election.
Yeah, that's disturbing, very disturbing.
Isn't that the definition of stupidity?
No, because if you look at the information they were given, it makes sense.
Yeah, but you know, you have to lean into the information and its sources. You can't just accept it on face value.
Well, that I agree with.
Scientists don't accept data, quote unquote, on face value. You know, so if you're really a reasonable person, if you're a critical thinker, if you're a systems thinker, you don't just say, "Oh, it says A equals B, therefore, you know, I must accept that."
But you're using a lot of ifs, and most people aren't on both
That's what I'm
sides.
saying. That's what I'm saying.
I'll give you a more cogent example. When Colin Powell went up to the United Nations and said Iraq has weapons of mass destruction, I knew that that was untrue. I didn't even have to do much research to know it was untrue. And yet, and Colin Powell also had evidence that this was not correct information, that he was repeating false information that supposedly came from the CIA. But in fact, he already knew that the CIA had removed that intelligence at the time that he recited it in front of the United Nations. And he and his close associates later, you know, admitted that they knew it was a lie when they used that information to argue for the run-up of the war. And Colin Powell's not the kind of guy who, you know, who lies glibly. He had enough reason to believe that he shouldn't say that. He was under a lot of pressure to say it.
Well, the pressure, I can't even imagine what the pressure could have been.
And he did apologize for that recently, didn't he?
Yeah, he and his assistant, I can't remember, the assistant was interviewed just this past few months ago on, I think, Terry Gross's interview on Fresh Air. And he talked about that, you know, about that, how that came to pass, that he was talked into making that presentation against his own better judgment. But he didn't have a strong enough reason to overthrow the CIA's own quote unquote intelligence. But I knew it was false. For one thing, the easiest way that you could know that it was false is that those weapons of mass destruction were binary chemicals, that each one was stable up to a point, but they didn't make a weapon until you combine them. So it's like making a recipe. You have to combine the ingredients. But in that case, the agents themselves had a shelf life of about 3 years. And they had those ingredients had been acquired from the West on a date known. And it was known that they were past their shelf life. That's not a complicated thing to do. And there was one guy who wrote an article that was published in one of the European journals saying, these things that we sold Saddam Hussein, they're beyond their shelf life. If you mix them today, they wouldn't have any potency.
So one guy in Europe wrote that article. Where was the American press and why weren't those questions asked then? You know, I can't just blame Colin Powell. It's a whole system that allowed that.
Yeah. And by the way, the guy who wrote that article was an American. He couldn't get it published in America, so he published it in a European journal. And it was quite, I mean, the guy was a scientist. He knew full well that whatever that Saddam had bought, it's like medicine. You know, medicine has a shelf life, especially if it's a psychoactive substance. Those don't last very long. Those are complicated organic molecules, and they don't last long, you know, under ordinary storage conditions or even extreme storage conditions. I mean, you buy a piece of fish, put it in the refrigerator for 5 days, it's not fish anymore. At least it is like fish.
People don't question when they don't want to know the answer.
Yeah. Or they get the narrative back and they don't know how to refute the narrative. I mean, I actually did this with a scientist who was working on cold fusion, And he was a diehard believer in cold fusion. And I said, and by the way, he was a chemist who worked at Los Alamos.
Cold or
I
warm
said-
fusion?
And I said to him, how did you falsify the null hypothesis? And he wouldn't answer at first. And finally, I asked it like 3 times. He says, oh, the null hypothesis doesn't work in chemistry. Hello? Seriously? Here's a career scientist, career chemist at Los Alamos who asserts that the null hypothesis method doesn't work in chemistry. Of course, he's actually talking about physics, not chemistry, because they were doing, fusion is physics, not chemistry.
I got my term.
And I wrote a long blog post documenting this conversation. But how many people looked at that blog post? Maybe 5, I don't know. But I knew it was baloney.
So Stacy, where do you want to go with that subject that you brought up?
Are you asking me or Stacy?
I was checking if Stacy thought we were still on track.
There is no track. There's just a spoke. It's just like the center and then many spokes.
But that question, how do you know that your hypothesis is the valid one? And in particular, how did you disqualify the plain vanilla null hypothesis? Their eyes will glaze over when you ask that question.
Yeah.
By the way, that same question, worded slightly differently, appears in the New Testament.
How is it worded?
It's interesting that the translations are all over the map on this particular response, but Pontius Pilate asserts a rumor that Jesus is the King of the Jews. And you should look at the different translations of the answer. Jesus answers it, well, that's what you say.
That's what he says.
Which is to say, well, that's your working hypothesis.
Right.
Which is true, that's his working hypothesis. But then you say, how did you falsify that I'm not the king? Or what's your evidence? So in sciences would say, first of all, what's your evidence to support your working hypothesis? And more importantly, what evidence did you accumulate to either falsify the null hypothesis or falsify your own pet hypothesis? This is what scientists do. There it is, essentially in the New Testament, attributed to Jesus, essentially asking the same kind of question. Not worded exactly the way I would have worded it, but fundamentally.
What would happen if we looked at things differently? Like Barry, earlier today, you said you were talking about all these mathematical concepts that, other people couldn't understand. What about if we heard, we heard some of the woo theories, what some people would call woo theories. And instead of trying to disprove those theories, the people that did understand the math tried in every way they could to see how that math could support that. If they took it from a different direction, because it's kind of hard to prove something that it's
Well,
not, yeah, go ahead.
That's the problem. I mean, Doug doesn't do quantitative analysis. He says, I don't do the math. Doug will do narratives, but he won't do the math. And Sam knows how to do the math, but he knows, like I do, that you won't get very far because people will, just basically blow off to say, well, math, I'm not doing the math.
Sam, I'll let you go in 1 second, but I just want to repeat. But my question is, what about if we change that dynamic and instead of going back and forth this way, that way, we just said, all right, let the people that do understand the math, that have the greater knowledge, about if they actually tried to use that knowledge to support what they were hearing. And now
look at the curve flattening story way back at the beginning of COVID, way back a year and a half ago, or almost 2 years ago. And people who could do the math on, flattening out the curve went on YouTube, and there's beautiful presentations on YouTube about the SIR model and the curve, and they presented it fabulously. How many people watch that or really, tried to understand the math of the SIR model? How many people here, raise your hand, have even heard of the SIR model, let alone, can say what letters SI and R stand for in the model?
I think here, I'm about to respond to Stacy, and that is that there are attempts of people who do this, who try to, fit a mathematical model into a woo claim, okay? And one of the earliest cases of that I can remember in my own life is Fritjof Capra with the book of the Tao of Physics, right? Now, the question these days is that too many people do it in a hand-waving way.
Yeah.
They say, here's the math. They say, here's an equation. They say something that has the word quantum in it. And all of a sudden people say, oh, wow, that must be true now. And there's so many misuses of the word quantum. I just can't even stand it, And so you really have to track what these claims are and what these models are very carefully. Otherwise, you're going to make situations even worse, because now somebody who thought, well, I don't understand the math behind it, now all of a sudden thinks, oh, I do understand the math behind it because somebody explained it to me falsely, but they don't bother to, really dig into it. So I think there is a rigor if you really want truth. There is a rigor that's required. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone has to have that rigor, but someone has to have that rigor. And that has to be communicated, and in my opinion, has to be respectful. Now, I can say like anyone, I'm here channeling, with my 8th chakra, and I'm going to write stuff down for you. And there are many people out there who will accept that. But I'm not going to do that unless I myself think that I'm in integrity with that claim. So many people are comfortable without that integrity, though. And they'll just hand wave and use the word quantum. They'll use the word, equation, and all of a sudden they get this level of truthiness that it didn't previously have, even though it's not actually sufficient. And I think that's what's happened when we get decades of an education system that worships popularity and actually makes fun of people for being nerds and geeks. The popular people get put into positions of power in companies and government. And the people who know how, who really know the truth, they're relegated to work for these people. While these people make unsubstantiated claims like big pipes, therefore must indicate that they've got these weapons. We saw these big pipes. That was one piece of data they cited. Barry knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, what Sam is referring to is that if you get a new piece of information that should modify your current set of beliefs, there's a mathematics called Bayes' theorem or Bayes' rule that tells you how to take a new piece of information and use it to refine what you believe. And even people who have studied Bayes' theorem can't use it. There's classical examples of people who were PhDs in physics who theoretically, sat through a course in Bayesian analysis, and you try to apply Bayes' theorem, and you even try conscientiously to apply it, and you screw it up. And the classical example is the Monty Hall problem. Monty Hall opens the door that has the booby prize, and then does that information change whether you should refine your belief about which of the other two doors is right? And most people cannot go through the Bayesian analysis correctly, even people who have studied the bloody thing. And I've done problems where I know that I'm supposed to use the Bayesian formula, and damn it, I can't figure out how to plug in the numbers. I've screwed it up myself, knowing that I'm supposed to do it and knowing it's really hard. It's really easy to make mistakes. And so when people don't do Bayes' theorem analytically, they sort of do it, intuitively, and they skew it. They buy.
And by the way, I could say a lot of things against machine learning and AI, but this is one area where AI does very well.
Bayesian.
It actually can keep systems of constraints, called a perspective or called a knowledge source or whatever. and keep them distinct and keep multiple hypotheses running as you get new information. That's one thing technology does do very, very well. One thing that humans don't, but machines can.
Yeah, plugging in the formula with the correct numbers in the correct spot and doing the calculation, making mistakes and getting the mathematically correct answer. Machines that are properly programmed can do that. Yeah. Somebody mentioned the Kalman-Busse filtering in that thread that I just added Sam to. That's really Bayesian filtering. That's really Bayesian analysis. It's a specific example of using it. When you got an information stream coming in and you're trying to find the pattern or estimate the probabilities of possibilities, Kalman filtering is really an application of Bayesian analysis.
You don't even have to go that far. You can just go into common syllogisms, like simple logic, and people will still screw that up.
Yeah.
Like if then, not if implies what? Okay.
Oh yeah.
People get that stuff confused all the time.
Yeah, the classical fallacies in Aristotelian logic. Yes.
Like absence of evidence does not mean evidence of absence, for example.
So there you go, Stacy. The humans would have the mathematical precision of a computer, but I see us offloading that to a computer, but I don't see future humans unless they somehow plant a computer chip in your brain. I don't see how humans are going to ever rise to the level of correct calculations that well-programmed computers have in terms of running mathematical formulas and getting, doing it right. I mean, I know from my own experience that having studied the formula and trying to use it in a homework problem, I screw it up.
Okay, jump in? No?
Kayla's having fun with her CG overlays here.
Yeah, it puts natural makeup on me.
Well, that's nice.
No, I'm just listening to you guys.
You're kidding about the makeup thing. That's not a filter. You actually put makeup on, right?
No, this is a filter.
Are you kidding?
I know, right? It looks very natural.
It
You
does. Well, here's the funny thing. Well, it's not funny. It's kind of depressing. But in the beginning of the call, Barry had to get off, so it was just me and Sam chit-chatting. And I sent him over to my page to look at something, and he says, "Is that your daughter?" It was me from a couple of years ago, which just goes to show what coming here straight out of bed and putting on weight does. I was like, I only know that person for a few years.
Yeah.
So I want to find out about that filter.
Snap camera. And the only reason why I have it is because when I teach online, it is the only camera that can reverse for everybody. So I don't have to worry about learning on my left side. I mean, it was good for my brain, but I was getting tired of it. When I'm doing, nice aparima dances where it's really slow and it's a lot of gestures and everything, it was very difficult to switch from right to left to teach them in mirror. So I found this technology that would mirror for me.
Hey, doesn't Zoom already have that?
Zoom will only mirror you. It won't mirror the other class, or the other people.
For some reason, my cat is particularly friendly this morning.
He looks exactly like the Friskies cat.
Does he?
Exactly.
I think he's probably past 21 pounds now.
So I kind of want to do a late check-in because this has been kind of on my mind.
Yeah.
So my son and I had severe colds. He still has kind of a severe cold. After 3 days of having a severe cold, he took an in-home COVID test, and it turned out negative. But he still has the cold, and so do I. I actually recovered a lot faster than he did. And, we just have a little bit of nasal drip. And yesterday it was relatively under control. We're both just blowing our noses and in the morning, and then that's it. Like this morning, I don't know if you can hear it from me, but I still have a little bit of remnants of that cold. So the kids really wanted to see the family, you know, my parents, their aunts and uncles and everything. And Maxwell was completely fine. No sign of a cold whatsoever. And he ended up like being in sincere denial, you know, because I was telling them, I said, the family is not going to want to see us, even with a lingering cold. And they were just like, oh no, we'll get better. Yesterday, you know, we're all almost 100%. But the family just straight up said, absolutely not, you can't come, even with the negative COVID test, everything. And I just started to get a little butt hurt because I'm just like, wow, you know, a couple of years ago wouldn't have been a problem at all.
Yeah.
You know, but this time around, people are getting paranoid. And so I to think about fear just really overrunning common sense. So kind of my butt hurt situation, and I got over it. And I'm like, oh, well, you know, everybody's trying to be safe. But that theme, that fear is just like running. People's common sense was just in my mind. So there's my chicken.
Yeah, I've had the seasonal flu for 8 days now, and everybody in the house that I went to Christmas Eve dinner with last night and going in, everybody there also had the seasonal flu. And the oldest son, who's like 24, had it really bad last night. He had it so bad that he was sequestering himself on the other side of the house, not even sitting at the table. But, you know, I started off with a sore throat, and then it switched to runny nose, and then a cough, and then back to sore throat and back to runny nose. And it's taking, you know, it's taking 10 days. And this seasonal flu this year is awful, at least on the East Coast. May not be so bad on the West Coast.
Yeah. Well, we even went to the movies and you could hear people kind of suppressing their cough.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was wearing masks, and I made sure that we were way on the corner side. I mean, it was 5 days into our cold, so, you know, the contagion wasn't really there, to be honest. But
Doesn't matter, because everybody, the seasonal flu is just going around, and evidently, unlike COVID, masks don't really, you know, I think it probably remains in the air on surfaces or whatever. And like, I'm trying to think, where did I pick this up at? I mean, I haven't been out of the house.
yeah,
Where did I pick the bloody thing up with, you know, Wednesday a week and a half ago? I don't know where I picked it up at.
Do you get packages delivered to your house?
I haven't had any package. I did get a call from my neighbor who had a problem with her computer on the Tuesday before I got it. I think, did I get it from my neighbor? Because I went over to solve a problem on her computer. And then she gave me, you know, she gave me some candy and some other stuff as a, you know, thank you. And I thought, did I get it from the food that she made? I don't know. I can't. I can think of 3 or 4 places where I might have picked it up, and I have no way to know which one.
Anyway, Kayla, I do see some of the questions because, you know, okay, to be entirely transparent, I don't take the flu vaccine every year. I did take COVID, and in fact, I've been very, very up to date on my booster as well. But most years, I actually don't get a cold. I don't get a flu. And if I do, it's probably about a 2 or 3 day cough. And that's about what it is. Okay, with a little bit of minor nasal drip. But it seems like, yeah, I agree with you. Most people go around in public assuming the, you know, chance of cold or cough or flu are just normal. But now they're kind of compounding that with COVID. And I think they're kind of, I don't know if confusing is the word, but, you know, the two together.
Conflating.
Because, yeah, I mean, we have not in the past really had serious problems if somebody had a sniffles or somebody had a small cough or whatever. They still join, you know, family events. They just be careful. And nobody thinks of that as a big risk. You know.
Symptoms
So,
are almost identical, except that they say there's a loss of smell with COVID, and they never say that with the cold or the flu. But you look at the list of, sore throat, coughing. What I didn't have a fever, I didn't have aches, I didn't have congestion. I could breathe just fine, and I've had my 3 shots. So I thought, okay, it's either a head cold or the seasonal flu. And my friends that I went to Christmas dinner with got tested, and they all said we're coming up negative on COVID. So it's a conventional, norovirus or whatever, head cold, seasonal flu.
Yeah, I was just kind of mad for my family. I mean, when we straight up asked them, because my children were, I had to put my mom on the phone. She's just like, oh no, just don't come over. No. No explanations. No, your grandpa has these issues and we just don't want to take a chance.
Yeah.
I was like, no, just don't come.
I skipped the 4th of July celebration with my friends because they were having company over besides me, and nobody knew, whether they had been exposed or not. I thought, well, it's the 4th of July, it's not worth it. I'll skip it. I don't need a hot dog, just, and to spend time with 4 strangers that who knows whether they've been exposed. They don't know if they've been exposed.
Oh, well, honestly, I don't care. It was great. Look at me. I'm in my robe. We had a very nice, beautiful Christmas dinner. I just feel so bad for the kids because they really wanted to.
Yeah.
It's just like the family time means a lot to them, even though I'm trying to protect them from the dysfunction of my family. They just got to figure it out for themselves. But right now, the community of like a bunch of people getting together excited them. And I asked a couple of friends if they would like to come over, normal friends that are fun and, have empathy and they're a little intelligent. But unfortunately, they couldn't come over. So it was just us. We watched Dave Chappelle and had a lovely dinner.
Oh, you know what Netflix show premiered yesterday is Don't Look Up. Have you seen the promos for that?
I heard about that.
Yeah, it's about this is again about, it's of course fictional, but it's a couple of scientists who see an asteroid headed for the Earth, and they're trying to reveal that the truth that there's a potentially this thing could hit the Earth and it would be the end of life on Earth. And Meryl Streep plays the president, and she laughs it off. It's a 2.5-hour movie. I haven't watched it yet because I haven't had 2.5 hours of uninterrupted time since it premiered yesterday. But it's exactly this issue. Like, do you believe the scientists? They go on, the network news, and they laughed off the set. So.
I was watching The Trials of Gabriel Fernandez.
I don't think I've heard of that title.
I don't know what that is.
It's awful. It's bad. But this poor baby, he was 8 years old, severely abused, and it exposed the system.
Is this a true story?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this poor boy. I used to work at a shelter for abused women and children, and I heard a lot of that stuff at a young age, and when I had my own children, I was like, thank God I didn't have children back then because it was so bad. But now I'm at a point where I'm like, I kind of need to see this again if I really want to get serious with trying to help out and seeing the issues. But it's really sad. It's very sad, and it exposes the extreme flaws in our government. I mean, this poor boy. There were just multiple accounts of the sheriff being called. There were accounts of, hi.
Damon's awake.
Oh, he is.
Yeah.
Good. There was, Child Protective Services called. There was all kinds of stuff, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yay. Mommy's got makeup on.
Hey, Max, man.
Maxwell can't wait for presents to be open.
I'm surprised he's not digging into it already.
Well,
I'm waiting for Damien.
Yeah.
Damien is still sleeping?
Oh, well, he's awake now. I think he's just texting his friends and we're giving him a chance to wake up. Yeah, he just woke up. It's too bad you guys aren't here. We have food and I would invite everybody over.
There are rumors that you're a very good cook.
Oh, I've seen evidence of it. Yeah.
Even though he doesn't eat my food.
Hey!
Can we have Jack in the Box? I had
That was
like,
only yesterday.
what did I have? I had like, just, I don't know why.
Amazing.
I go to the grocery store and I just start putting things in my cart, even though I just need one or two things.
You also like the wine.
Le cuisine elegante du Joachim Le Boit.
Cuisine of Jack in the Box.
The elegant cuisine of Jack in the Box. Le cuisine elegante de Joachim Le Boit.
Duck
Plug in my French.
and what?
What? B-O-I-T is box in French. What?
Well, you're always welcome to escape your dysfunctional family and come see my dysfunction. Okay.
Oh yeah, yes. In the springtime, when I could teach workshops.
I was telling Barry I have a 5-pound smoked prime rib roast that I'm going to be celebrating tonight.
FTP me some. Food transfer protocol.
That's right.
I love ribs. Living alone, there's a lot of foods that I won't cook because it makes sense if you have a lot of people, and so a lot of things I won't cook here just for myself. It doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Do anybody here do New Year's resolutions?
No, I don't believe in that. I don't like it.
Not so much resolutions, but projections,
Expectations
Intentions?
you know, intentions. Intentions is a
or
good word.
intentions, okay. I don't think I've ever done them seriously.
To me, this time of year, this feels very much like Yom Kippur. This feels like a time of reflection.
Well, I mean, people go around saying, you know, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And, you know, here we are in 2 years of COVID, and a lot of people have died, you know, in the last 2 years. And it's hard to say that these are merry or happy times because we're in a period here. People are out of work, you know, you can't fly because the air staff are all sick and out, and, you know, theaters sell tickets and they close the show because the crew is all sick, and you know there's not a lot to be thrilled about. The happiest thing that happened was this morning successfully launched the telescope, and that went off flawlessly. That was the one thing that I was cheerful about. I mean, you know, great dinner last night with friends, but you know the oldest boy was sick as a dog. And the rest of us are recovering. You know, it's hard to be cheerful when people are suffering.
Excuse me, can we go back to an old part of the earlier discussion?
Sure.
Which one?
Okay with me.
You see, I just see Sam here, and Sam is also a big believer in mathematics. And in the group where Barry and Stacy is in, I don't know about Kayla, there Jalel from Tunis, who is science advisor for UNESCO in systems, one of my big heroes, just wrote something I'm now adding into the chat, and it's already sent now. So he says he's a strong believer in mathematics, but not only. maybe you can read it in the chat. I'm not so good in reading and spelling because it's very central for me. Can we really make the bridge between languages, cultures, mindsets, whatever? And can we get people like him, who is really a strong believer in AI and linguistics and logics and computing? Can we agree on something Jalal just wrote? Can you see it?
Yeah,
Read
but
it.
Stacy's not in LinkedIn. It's just
No,
Sam just
Heiner put it
joined.
in the chat of this particular session.
Oh, this chat. Oh, okay.
Yes. Sam, did you already join that group, or
Yes,
should I?
I sent you notes in each of those groups that I saw. I think there were two of them.
So they don't let you in, or what's happening?
No, I'm there.
You're in. Okay, so you can read what James Rosa wrote before.
It's
who
a long
started this-
scroll back. You
Who
know,
did this
let
long
me see
thing on the history and why he started his own SIG, special interest group. And I told him I'm tired of SIGs, special interest groups. I believe in GIGs, global interest groups. So we have maybe a chance to really bridge our compartmentalizations.
Well, I agree that wanting a system model that's accurate and actually having one that's been validated, there's a big effort to get from, we need a system model for what's happening, and we have one that we validated and it makes good predictions. That's a lot of work.
Yep.
Don't always have them.
And I'm just reading this excerpt that you put in the chat, and I'm already having a reaction to it. It's kind of amusing.
I guess so. That's why I included you. You are a fast reactor.
It's this absolutist notion of people who argue against mathematics that to me is nonsensical.
I mean, you can argue that the mathematical models are sort of very primitive and haven't been validated. That's a valid argument.
Okay, wait.
They're not reliable yet.
I'm going to say one more thing. All models can be expressed mathematically.
Yeah.
Without exception. All models can be expressed mathematically. And they can be further tested mathematically. So for someone to say, I have a model, but it's not mathematical, is just someone saying, I don't know how to do so.
Yeah.
That's all they're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you see, Sam, this is where I want to get us to.
Mhm.
There is something like unmathematical and mathematical. Is the and or. So include the mathematic, but look also beyond into other ways and means of cultural expressions. So if you just know about bicycle riding or colors and feeling and senses, then many things cannot be expressed in a formula or alphanumeric.
That's why I disagree.
Can we include that as well? Or are we making there our boundary?
No, I think any language which expresses any thought or model is essentially homologously translatable to a mathematical expression. Sorry if I munged that word. Okay, so people who say mathematics is irrelevant just don't understand language.
Yeah, it's like you say, you know, two things are positively correlated. That may be true, but what's the coefficient? What's the correlation coefficient? Without the number, all you know is that as one goes up, so does the other. That's maybe true, but it's not terribly useful.
Yeah. And look, the whole point to using a precise language is to push on the claim, to understand how far the claim can be tested, can be valid. You know, and that's the whole point of expressing things in mathematics, is so that you can actually understand what you can do to those expressions. Can you test it? Can you devalidate it? Can you nullify it? Can you validate it? Can you substantiate it with evidence? Can you apply it to a different model? Can you extrapolate it? Can you interpolate it? You know, all those things are possible once you understand that all it is just a language and a way of thinking.
A thing you did not get me. I understand a rational, a perspective like an extra and an and, not an either or, but an and or. So if you tell me how to express love in mathematics, please come over.
Yeah, there's probably a billion things you could do to express love in mathematics. You know,
I spent 35 years doing that, not just love, but emotions in general. And people
because there's
have
a billion different implications that people accept in this notion of love. It's big, it's not precise, you know, that's why you can do it. But it doesn't mean that it's not possible.
But quantifying, you know, taking dictionary words and assigning a precise mathematical quantity to them. This is what science does all the time. You take words like energy or power, you know, and these are words that have been in the dictionary for ages, or even information. These are perfectly dictionary words, and then somebody goes along and says, okay, we're going to actually quantify energy so we can put a number on it and charge you for, you know, buying power from the power company, or we're going to put a number on information. And these are huge breakthroughs. Quantum temperature, we put a number on it. And you look through the history of science and you see taking an ordinary dictionary word and putting a numerical quantity that's measurable, an objective measurement of it. These are huge breakthroughs when you do that. And then when you get, you know, things like, you know, power is energy per unit time, suddenly people's eyes glaze over because they don't actually want to do the math, even though that's how the power company charges you for your electric bill.
And then use that to define what work means.
Yeah,
Work,
work and energy are equivalent. Work is a synonym for energy in that physics model. It takes energy to do work on a one-to-one basis. So you get thermodynamics and all this, you know, HVAC, and pretty soon when you get to HVAC, you know, you've only got a few people who have licenses that know what they're doing.
So don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying math is the only way to express things. I'm saying math is a useful way to express things, and that it can augment poetry, it can augment narrative, it can augment film, it can augment, you know, vignettes as a way to introduce ideas to people.
Yep.
All of which is valid. But what I hear most often is, oh, we have to do the narrative, the mathematics is irrelevant, okay? It's not. The mathematics can add to our understanding.
Yep.
Mathematicians will never come and tell you the narrative is invalid. No, it's often used as inspirational to get to the precision of the communication that you really want, if you're really interested in truth. If you're not interested in truth and you're just only interested in feeling good, fine, ignore the math. But some people want to feel, you know, truth, not just good. So that's why I have almost a very quick reaction to the very first two lines in that excerpt that you posted there. See, I'm sorry if I'm coming across too pedantic on this, but I've seen the pendulum swung too far the other direction, where it's too easy to decry science, you know, to deprecate mathematics, to poo-poo, you know, precise thinking, to poo-poo systems thinking. And I think we as a society suffer when that happens. When there is such a profound disrespect for truth, that science and mathematics can be poo-pooed. That's where I really have to draw the line. Not for me personally, but for society, because society will go downhill if we have any reasonable minority that decides that the truth can be ignored and witness. That's what's happening in society today. huge segments of society, not just small ones, that don't understand the truth. And they make up their own way of thinking and they impose it on others. And just by sheer volume and noise alone, they make a lot of people suffer because they ignore the science, they ignore the models, they ignore reasoning, and they don't want to be accountable. And that's why these lines must be drawn, in my opinion. Okay.
You know, you talk about dysfunctional systems. I mean, Caleb talks about dysfunctional families just a few minutes ago, and everybody knows this term dysfunctional. You have dysfunctional families, dysfunctional organizations. So I say to people, okay, pick a dysfunctional system that you have in mind. What's missing? What's missing in a dysfunctional system? It's a favorite question I ask people. What's missing in a dysfunctional system?
Nothing. It's in a family, at least. A dysfunctional family is actually functional, or it wouldn't keep going. Everybody's getting some sort of a payoff. It is functioning.
If it's dysfunctional,
We call it dysfunctional. But what is the actual definition of functional?
well, that's the point, because if an engineer is going to build a functional system, he's going to make it behave according to some particular function. Some mathematical function defines what it's supposed to be doing if it's functioning optimally. And a dysfunctional system is missing the correct function. I mean, it's almost like who's buried in Grant's tomb. What's missing in a dysfunctional system is the function that belongs there that isn't there. And then the next question is, okay, what subject in school do you learn about functions?
You see, this is why I try to trigger a little bit, Sam. What do we mean by function? What do we mean by sign? I knew I can push a button and then Sam reads the first sentence, it explodes or reacts or whatever. I think it is not about mathematics. It is about science. And I believe especially you in the US, I mean, not you people here, but the people in Flyoverland, you have this fight. Carl Sagan had already about this fight in science. And when I try to say, I need science, I mean hardcore science to the very depths, but also go beyond, then it is really hard to communicate. Kayla was just speaking about dysfunctional families. We did here with the European Commission some studies on negative body image and dropout rates in schools. What are the hidden root causes, the hidden agendas, what the children cannot say because they are living in dysfunctional villages, families, whatever. It is a way, how can we express? And that is why I've been putting this term in from our encyclopedia into that. If I take in information, then I have about 50 hits. When I put in poetry, I have 1 hit. So there is no languaging for such a soft or vague or whatever things. And that's why we, especially men, are fighting for the exact term and the right formula and whatever, and not going with the flow, dancing with the flow. That's why I'm putting it up, and I'm presently writing a hard article on the future of this encyclopedia, because the original idea to really do the broad spectrum, many languages, many cultures, many fields, many ways of cultural expression. And then it always comes down to someone saying, I know what that means, But if you look into the link to what is information in the encyclopedia, then you have 50 links, and you have to be very concerned in which context is this meant, and in which context, by whom is it understood or interpreted.
I mean, if you look up the word function in that encyclopedia, will it give the definition that most people think of? A function is an event where you get together and schmooze with people over wine and cheese. That's what most people think of as a function.
A social function, yes.
Yeah,
Social
Sam's hand-
function, right. And
Sam's-
everybody knows what a social function is. You have wine and cheese and, you know, talk small talk. But if you say, well, no, it's, you know, it's a mathematical formula that describes some relationship between two or more variables, most people will say, no, I'd rather have the wine and cheese. Thank you very much.
Sam?
So maybe this is unnecessary, but I sense that my support for mathematics and the sciences allows some, perhaps Heiner, to believe that I don't value poetry or music or art or, you know, other more, let's say, humanistic forms of expression. That couldn't be further from the truth. Those are where most inspirations come from. But a willingness to take those inspirations and to translate them into precise language and concepts should not be devalued. I'm only trying to extend the range of communications from precise all the way to the inspirational and very, very fuzzy. There's a whole spectrum here. Some people only want to be on this part of the spectrum. I want to be across the entire spectrum. Now you're saying that some people only want to be on the precise end and don't want to understand poetry and art. That's not me. There may be people like that, but that's not me. And by the way, witness, I have not taken such a strong stand until 4 years of these GCC conversations have gone by. I've been very patient. I've been very willing to understand where the other stuff can lead us, you know, and I've seen what it does to truth. I've seen what it does to alternate reality. And that's a microcosm of what's happening in the outer, bigger world. And that's why I've decided to take a much stronger stand more recently, because I can see that trend and that path, and that, to me, if we care about society, if we care about our children and our 5th and 7th generations, that's damaging, truly damaging. And that's why I'm being very vocal about it. Over.
Well, look at the weather patterns. People say, well, there's a storm coming. Storm is a perfectly good dictionary word, but it doesn't say how intense. And now they say, well, you know, it's an E1, 5, you know, hurricane or whatever. And now we suddenly have record-breaking storms. You know, a tornado that for hundreds of miles, you know, instead of just a single touchdown. And we have these floods in Houston. And so now people are realizing you really do have to do the quantitative estimate. What is the intensity of the storm? How do you measure intensity? What does that mean in terms of damage? You know, how many lives will be lost and how much property damages does that map into? So yeah, I mean, people are beginning to realize quantitative estimates of a word like storm really makes a difference on whether you run for the hills or you wait it out. I see Stacy has her hand up.
I need a breath first. So, yeah, how do I say this? So there's 2 relatively intelligent women in this room that have been left out of the conversation. And I want to bring it up because it's something that I see happens often. And it goes to this, I think. It would have been nice if somebody reading the first 2 sentences of what you were discussing without bias said, okay, so what he's saying is, and then in very simple English, put it into a way that I would understand, Kayla would understand. I don't mean to speak for you, Kayla, but I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong. So that our mind could at least start to go in that direction instead of taking the whole thing as one, which honestly, I don't get the whole thing. I'd have to I'd have to look up half those things. So basically we're left out of the conversation. So there's no way you're going to get anything of value from either one of us. So for me right there, that's a waste of resources. And it doesn't seem to move anything forward. That's it. That's all I got.
It's back to the question, what's the value of putting a mathematical formula on top of a general discussion? Like the word storm, putting a mathematical model, saying the intensity and therefore predicting the amount of damage.
Right.
That's really what they're talking about.
But I concede that there's a value, but you guys, and I mean men or whoever, in this case, it's have to find a way to give an entry level, because just because I don't understand certain math, I mean, I was always math answer correct, but I never knew how I got the answer. But I always got show your work. Well, to me, it was like, well, the fact that I got the right answer, isn't that more important? But what I'm saying is to assume that somebody that doesn't have the educational background to contribute by not giving them an entry point in is harmful to the system as a whole, in my opinion.
Sam?
Okay, so 2 points. Let me respond to Stacy first, okay? When I responded, I believe I was trying to give a fairly understandable explanation of my reaction to Heiner. I was not, in my opinion, using a lot of mathematical concepts or difficult terms or difficult equations. So I thought that I was giving a graspable entry point into that conversation. So it surprises me a little bit that you felt that I was not doing so.
You're personalizing it. You're
No,
just personalized this whole thing. This was not about you at all.
but it
You
is
have to
because
be the
I'm one
one
of the
that-
men that were being called out here.
No,
Okay,
No.
all right. So let me disregard that point then. Okay, let me move on to my
Disregard.
second point. The second point is in the need for expression or at points, precision. I go back to a lot of discussions about emotion, about empathy, about in relationships. And I actually find myself recalling a moment where I was in shock when I attended one of these, $700 workshops, Friday, Saturday, Sundays, you get together and write and you share, et cetera, where someone attempted to tell me that all emotions are mapped to 4 basic emotions.
That's
Well,
Doug's theory.
Mad, sad, glad, and something else.
Right, that's Doug.
It was like guilt or something like that. And I said, okay, that's fine as a starting point, but you can't get very precise if that's all you understand about emotions. If that's all you can say about emotions, you're not going to say much that's very insightful or sophisticated, because there's a range of 8 billion people. They're not just all feeling one of these 4 things in such simple terms. Even Eskimos have a finer understanding of snow than we do about emotions, if this is all we know about emotions. So to really truly understand things, it is useful to get precise. It is useful to get into nuance and second order and third order effects. So I'll be chastised if you want, if you say I'm taking this too personally, but it was directly right after I was saying something about not providing women an entry point, and that's why I was trying to understand what it was that you were not seeing that was taking place. So take that as an inquiry,
so here,
and take it personally if you want, but that's truly out of curiosity.
Heiner, can I go first real quick? I just want, thank you. So when I read that first sentence, and what I think is man relative. Is that what that sentence first means? Yes or no? Because I don't know if I'm right in understanding it or not. That's the message that I can get. Math is relative.
Yeah.
He's saying math is relative. Is that true? Yes or no?
That's what he seems to be saying.
Okay, I would have liked to have at least established that, because I didn't even know if I was right about that. And that's what I'm saying. And I'm not just talking about you, I'm talking about in conversations, when we're having conversations with each other, if we could just break it down into little pieces so that we know we're all traveling the same path. That's all I meant. And I don't know if you know, I mean, again, I can't speak for Kayla. I know that for me, I tuned out for a while. I just, you know, I just sat back.
Math is the language of relationships, right, Sam?
Okay.
Of which I am admittedly very, very poor.
Heiner, thank you. Go ahead.
Well, again, this opposites, this polar thinking, is it relative or is it absolute? So you see, to know first, Sam, did you read the whole paragraph
Yes,
or just stuck with the first sentence?
I read the whole thing, but I only
And-
reacted to the
And
first.
second, I really want to hear where Kayla is on this. Because for me, cultural expressions is not just dance, it's conversation, it's deep listening. And one of my very dear persons was trying to do annotations of ballet and dancing, formation dancing, and all these ways to bring all these fields into it. So you see, you have boundaries in a bubble, but if you have fields, you have overlapping. So it is not neither or. That's why I added the A rational and the A perspective, which is and or. And Einstein and Tagore were discussing in mathematics and in music annotations because they couldn't speak together English. So you at least need another realm and not either or. You're either from Venus or you're from Mars. You either fight or you either love, but get into your mind the fields and overlapping fields of and or. And that is the problem of our encyclopedia. We have all this hard-headed or block-headed, I don't know what is best in men, fighting over terms and not having the tolerance and the deep wisdom of this Jalel who was writing this, knowing a lot about systems, but also knowing a lot about cultures and calligraphy and all this. That is why he is a science editor and advisor to UNESCO, to really go beyond the one discipline.
He's a professor of systems theory at Georgia Tech, it says here.
Well, he was in many places studying, not only in Germany and America. He's a professor now in Tunis, in Tunisia.
Presently full professor of systems theory and control at the University of Tunis, El Manar.
Okay.
Where did I read that he was at Georgia Tech? Oh, because he's got Georgia Tech as his logo, but he's actually not there anymore. Tunis is Tunisia, correct?
I'm just giving you an idea that there are people who have been in many places, in many cultures, speaking many languages, and we have a chance here to really widen our sphere. That means more than male or female energies or fields, but really deep listening and going beyond one form of annotation or expression.
I'll find out more about Jalel. Thank you.
Well, you're the ideal candidate for me. That's why I brought it up. And we might need another session, and especially in the way of Stacy, because this wholeness seminar of ISSS we did in a way to explain all the systems terms for kids. All this was there, and they have been throwing it from the website of ISSS for 15 years. Can you believe that? Now we bring it up again, and it's like a roller coaster. I mean, it's like a nightmare how science, I mean, the bad, not the good science in the popular civic sense of Carl Sagan, is really manipulating our public sphere. And then they wonder that media can do it even better.
So I want to go back on a previous theme. I am very curious how Kayla is taking all these statements the last 20 minutes or so.
Well, I have to thank Stacy for actually bringing that up, because it has been my experience that I tune out a lot of conversations because it's not broken down simple enough. And it's unfortunate because I do want to learn and I do want to listen. You know, I as an individual want to lean in, you know, but it's very difficult when all of these things are just flying everywhere, you know, and I think I would have to speak to the simple people too, which is why I kind of launched that campaign with my son, is to break things down, you know, as a child, to a child, so that other adults can be able to lean in as well and absorb that, because some of us don't have the opportunity to, number one, and some of us just think that way. We don't, you know, our intellects, well, my intellect, I think is pretty good, but I know for a fact that there's other people whose intellects aren't that great. And, you know, to slow down a conversation and to be able to break it down may actually spark something to give them a chance. You know, that's what my initiative is really with my son, and it speaks to a lot of adults. So thank you for that. If I were to tread very dangerously too, I also find that it is a trend among the entitlement of men. I'm really sorry to be straightforward of that, that it's just, again, this just age old and entitlement of just jumping in, blah, you know, so I definitely felt that as a woman, but, you know, and again, an unfortunate thing is I'm used to it. The third thing is kind of to speak to Heiner about culture. If I were to humor myself, I would, you know, kind of want to put a Joel thing out there and say that culture is both sophisticated and simplistic at the same time. And thankfully, we're at a point in the world where more and more people are becoming a lot more curious about culture. And I think that's a huge step. And we're also starting to untangle a lot of our misconceptions and our views about certain cultures. And there's opportunities, I think, you know, using the internet. I think mathematics is very relative. I use math in dance. But those are my initial thoughts, Sam, in all its purity. I hope that answered some of your questions.
Certainly it leads to more possible conversations, which is good, because I don't want to assume that I know what you mean by mathematics is relative. So I want to have that conversation at some point.
I'd like to take a measurement from Kayla. If I were to ask Maxwell, can you explain to me what is meant by the term sustainable practices? Do you think he could give a much better response today than he could 2 weeks ago?
Maxwell's sad and groaning because he wants to open gifts, but he might humor us with an answer.
I notice he's hiding behind you when I mentioned his name.
He doesn't want to answer. He wants to humor himself because he really he wants to open his gifts. But he has been able to tell me a little bit about sustainability, right? What is it? Can I tell? Should I tell them, or do you want to tell them? You tell. He said sustainability is to be happy.
So he equates it with being happy.
It was kind of cool because Jean Paul, go ahead. Jean Paul had asked them what sustainability means to them. And then both Dakota and Maxwell were asking what sustainability is. And, oh, yay, great. Anyhow, they came with their own definition. It is to, they would like to sustain their happiness.
So of something you would like to have be sustained.
Yes.
An instance of something that could be sustained, but rarely is in real life. I mean, we have periods of joy and we have periods of suffering and sorrow. Yes, it's a sawtooth or a cycle or whatever. Yeah, it's a wheel. So, but it suggests that he knows what it means. But in terms of cultural practices, it's not clear that he really understands the importance of governments or organizations organizing themselves with sustainable practices so that they don't become dysfunctional. Like pumping carbon dioxide into the atmosphere indefinitely, that is not a sustainable practice. If you want to have a biosphere that supports life, for the indefinite future. Is allowing anyone in America to buy a gun, is that a sustainable practice? Having a constitutional right to buy guns at will, is that a sustainable practice?
That'll go for another couple hours if I answer that.
I mean, it's sort of a yes or no question fundamentally, but another question is for how long can you sustain that practice before there's nobody left alive?
About 260 years.
Well, remember, you're starting with a blunderbuss, not AR-15s or whatever they're called these days.
Tease, how's your day going?
I was walking, enjoying the clear sky, frozen air, just zero, below zero. So we'll get icy conditions tomorrow, and then it's warming up again. So it's treacherous weather tomorrow for people. It will become slippery, rain falling on ice, on cold roads. So becoming ice immediately tomorrow.
It's the same here in Berlin, but I have to leave. Also expect some presents for Christmas, and I enjoyed the session. So over and out.
Dankeschön.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Here it actually snowed a little bit last night, although it didn't stick. And it's supposed to snow the next 2 days. So there's still a chance it may get white later today. But it's in the low 30s. Overnight, it got to the high 20s. Fahrenheit.
Freezing rain here. It's 31 degrees and it's coming down wet and freezing on the ground.
And some of you may not have caught, my son just left 7 p.m. last night on a solo trip to Costa Rica and to Mexico and to
Columbia.
Colombia. Yeah, he's landing in Colombia first. So he's going to be there until January 18th. So he's got no hotels planned. He just wants to go and meet people and do things on the spur of the moment.
I'm gonna do that when I grow up.
At what age? That's,
He
what
is
is it?
He is 29. Actually,
29.
yeah. When I got married, that's how my ex-wife and I spent our honeymoon. We had a ticket into Madrid, and 15 days later, we had a ticket out of Frankfurt. Nothing else other than Eurail pass. So each of us had a Eurail pass, a backpack, and a ticket out of Frankfurt, and that's all we had. So we met locals, we talked to people, they recommended places, where to go, where to eat, where to stay. That was a fun way to spend two weeks. So I think my son is kind of doing that.
But we are in the Netherlands, we are in a lockdown now again because of very early actually. So we are really containing as much as possible. The Omicron seems not to be that much, but they're monitoring immediately now. Actually, it's a result of mathematics because there was a model made and there was a prediction made. So Saturday, a week ago, just not this Saturday, but the Saturday before, there was emergency break on the society. So the measurements, so school stopped more or less. So, and then we'll see when we start up again. But it was very effective modeling, probably. I mean, for the decision making. Now the model has to be reassured continuously. But that's what's happening here. So for a boy then going there, well, 29, I don't know how the pandemic is going further. So the Dutch are not allowed to go on skiing in Austria now. Well, they can go, but then they have to go 10 days into quarantine before they can start skiing when they go to Austria at the moment.
Yeah, it's an odd time to pick to go travel to strange places, but I guess when you're that age, you want to take advantage of the time, and I guess I'm not at that age right now. Although I would like to grow up at some point and do the same thing.
Are you in your 50s, Sam?
Ah, thank you.
You're in your 60s?
How old do I look actually?
Well,
And I will
You
not
know,
take
it's-
offense, okay? Be as
you
accurate
know the
as-
old saying, it's hard to tell and how old an Asian is. You've heard that, haven't you?
At times.
Yeah.
How do I behave? How old do I appear?
I was
Those are
gonna
two
say,
different questions.
I'm gonna say mid to upper 50s.
Stacy, I think you and Kayla both know. I think Teese knows also.
I don't remember. I know I asked you once. I don't remember.
I guess
Kayla, you remember?
I could look on Facebook and see if you gave your year of birth on your birth date.
I do. I don't hide that sort of thing.
Yeah, I don't pay attention to age that much.
But thanks, Barry. I am 62.
I thought.
Barry is the oldest in the room. I'm 65.
You know,
Kayla's the youngest in the room.
I don't see that you listed your birthday on did you?
Mhm.
Contact basic.
Well, if we're connected on the LinkedIn now, you can probably see it on LinkedIn too.
Yeah, I guess if you list where your date of your degree, then you can usually. Yeah. Well, you did not list your birthday on
No?
looking for it.
Sam, where is your son going to in Costa Rica? Did he say?
No. In fact, he just told me a few days ago he was going. And then last night, the only reason he called last night was he wanted me to add the international roaming package on the cell phone. But I don't even know which dates or which towns or whatever. So he's just going to Medellin first, and I don't know how long he's going to be there. He'll decide once he gets there.
I grew up a long time ago. I used to travel, and I'm trying to do that this next year. I actually will be going to Costa Rica for sure in November. I will be taking both of my kids.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yes, but I might go there in June to start a workshop.
Oh, cool.
That was my plan prior to the pandemic. It was funny. I bought my tickets, and then the next week we were shut down. Yeah. And then a couple of weeks after that, it was no longer safe to travel. So now I'm kind of picking up where I started. Hi, Abby. That's Abby, yeah?
Your thing went off to pick up the pyramid.
Yeah.
Oh,
go in about
Gail.
2 minutes. Yeah.
I was kidding.
Old. I'm getting old.
Gail's reminding me I have to go pick up the prime rib in a few minutes.
Oh, Maxwell wants to say hi to Gail.
Hey, there's Maxwell, Gail.
Hi, Maxwell. How are you?
Good.
Good.
He wants to do a session with Gail.
Yay. Yeah.
You want to go sliding down the stairs again?
Huh?
Yeah. He bonded with Gail.
Little kids seem to like me a little bit. Because I'm still a kid too, by the way.
Yeah, isn't that what we all are? We're all kids, but we're in this like, you know,
State.
This kid is the real.
You know the difference between a child and a scientist?
Never did.
huh?
Very.
Imagination.
There's no difference.
Curiosity.
So I do have to leave in about 10 minutes to go pick up my prime rib.
Yeah, I have to go get dressed. Can't wear a filter.
It's the best. I gotta wake up my son so that we can get on with the gift.
I've been waiting since 6 o'clock.
Yeah, Maxwell, I'm impressed how patient you are this morning.
I've been waiting since 6
Oh, there's my fat cat.
Aww.
Ta-ta.
Whatever.
Remember Tatami, Maxwell?
Yeah.
I had a Tommy look just like him. His name was Tommy too.
He gained 5 pounds in 4 months.
Yeah. He's gaining more too.
Did you say Tommy or Tatami?
Tatami.
That's the name of a
Japanese
mat.
bamboo mattress. Tatami.
Yeah, right.
So I'm gonna something that I had wanted to say because Sam wrote, KAC men just jump in. And I want to further explain that with an example. When I date, when I go online and try to date, there is so much power over for conversations. I have not met one man who will just lean in and is curious about me. They're more curious about if we're compatible, great. But in my opinion, the way I like to do it, my first step is I'm curious about you. First, you know, I don't know if we're compatible or not. I'm kind of a prude by nature. I've always been that way. I've always been more interested in the person prior to the compatibility. And I think that's a good first step, a very safe first step. And a lot of the times, 99.9% of the time, there's lots of power over. Just, you know, projecting into this crazy fantasy relationship, talking over me, questioning me about my ideas, you know, trying to impose. And it's been like that my whole life. So, you know, I don't know if I hold that biased opinion. I'm trying to have my strong beliefs held lightly, but it's really hard when it's been 4 decades. And I will leave it at that. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
We can lean into that at one of these future sessions. Well, I'll leave this open if you like, but I got to go get some smoked prime rib.
Yeah, I think you can close it. I think we all have to, well, Kayla does, I do. I don't know about anybody else, but I will say goodbye. Bye. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, happy holidays.
Merry Christmas.
Bye. Bye. So we're still here. Bye, Barry.
Bye-bye.
Are you going? You're leaving too?
Unless you have something you want to talk about, did you want to say?
No, not really. Well, anything, but I was reading about Thomas Cook, that's all. He was traveling on exploration. And I found this third journey ended in Hawaii and being killed there. So I think,
He's the one who was, is he the one who discovered the Pacific Islands?
yeah, Hawaii, yeah, oh, yeah, yes. he
Why,
did.
yeah, okay.
And they had to discover unknown lands between near the South Pole, which did not exist. And I think, well, he did not refuse a third journey, so it might be too ambitious. So he had health problems already. So I think two journeys would have been good for him. He had a family already, so a wife before he did his first exploration.
Well,
So, and always he was away more than 1 year on the explorations. So really, it was not a family man, I'm sorry to say. So he really left us.
yeah.
So
Was
really,
he British, Cook?
yeah, British, yes. From
Because so was Ross. Ross is the one who died en route to the South
Yeah.
Pole. He didn't make it.
he came from a small village, which I can remember easily because I can write it down. Martin was the.
Yeah.
So it's a nice name, but in Oxfordshire or something. So really, if I was, because and it was late. So he had the third journey. He was asked to find a passage between Bering Strait north along Canada and then back to UK. While before 1600, the Dutch already tried to find a road through Nova Zembla, and they were stuck there. And they went all winter. They stayed there, and then when the spring came, they had to go back by boat.
You're talking about the
really-
Northwest Passage?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Northwest Passage, but then with the Dutch tried to go to the Bering Strait north over
Oh, yeah.
Russia, which
Right.
did
Very, yeah, I
before-
think,
even
I
before
think
1600.
recently, the Navy's icebreaker did manage to break through the frozen ice up in the northwest part of the North America. So I think there is now a Northwest Passage, or at least they can open it.
Well,
don't
in
think they use it.
and the Russians also tried to, of course.
Yeah.
They try with just possible.
But between
Because
global warming and these huge icebreaker Navy ships, I think they finally did break through at least once or twice.
So, but it's not the real subject. Just what I was.
As far as I know, it's not used as a commercial shipping passage.
Yeah.
Even though they can break through, I guess, at least in the summertime.
But Thomas Cook also found out was the remedy against scurvy. So he.
Oh, vitamin C. Yeah.
Yeah. He knew that to have fresh vegetables. But in the second journey, he traveled back through Batavia, which is Jakarta now in Java. So, and then he got the other illnesses. So no scurvy, but he lost many men in Batavia because of the malaria and other diseases from the tropics. But he didn't want to go back south because the ship was not good enough. So he didn't want to go, so he wanted to travel through Batavia. Then so the second is okay, but he also had to mend the ship and so on, and people ill and on. So he managed to come back twice, but the third time, of course, he did not. But he had a good ship, of course, but he knew how to mend it when it was broke. But he did well. He traveled through New Zealand mainly, I saw. So he because Australia was just discovered. So the Dutch had already done the west coast part and some part of Tasmania. So he did the east coast. He went and he in his second travel he went through the barrier reef. So it was difficult, of course. He stranded, survived. People, he managed to get the ship through the barrier reef, but he did strand. So
Which cape did he go around? Was it the African Cape or the South American
he
Cape?
went around more or less twice. So first one way around, and then the second time way around. More or less.
He went both capes.
Yeah, both capes, both times, both capes. First time from west to east, and second or other side, or from east to west first time, and then from well, maybe first from west to east. I'm not sure again, but I think the other time we went to west to east. So second time maybe, I don't know. Because now I think okay, because difficult traveling because he made some round trips. So he went to. The third time he really went to 17th and 16th width, so and on the planet. So he went near the Antarctic. And of course, he understood then there must be a landmass south of where he was.
So he hypothesized Antarctica, but didn't actually.
Yeah. Because of the ice, the type of ice he saw.
Yeah.
But also what was said in that, what I saw on YouTube, that he already imagined no land masses there because of the winds, of course. They're strong and they go straight all around Antarctica. So you can see from the winds that there's no breakage of the winds if you go near Antarctica. That's very strong winds.
I think Antarctica is twice the size of Australia. It's really big.
Yeah,
Antarctica and the sea around it is 1/10 of the planet's surface.
But we have to see if it melts completely, then it will be an archipelago. So it will not be a landmass so much. So it seems a landmass, but most is ice. So we'll have to see if it's melted, how much is left of what we think of the land's mass that's above sea level.
Yeah. I know there's 1 or 2 mountains that stick up above the ice, but a lot of places the ice is a mile thick.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know if it's ever been mapped where the ice ends in the.
Yes, there is. Well, the USA is very keen on doing research there, but Trump didn't like all the results from the South Pole, global warming, and so he was not happy with the research results because they were warning because of global warming, seeing what happened in the South Pole.
Well, they said if that ice melts, it would raise the ocean something like 5 feet, I think.
Yeah, but I don't know, but 70 meters is the wildest guess. But I shared with you the meteorological institute projections from the Netherlands. I told you already, 23 will have new forecasts from the Dutch meteorological institute.
BBC posted a really nice 40-minute documentary about Antarctica, and actually in the GCC Facebook thread I posted a link to this lovely little BBC piece on Antarctica. There's a lot of interesting stories about it.
Okay, I'll hope I can find it.
Yeah, just if you look on the GCC, a post from me like two days ago, I think it was. It's a link to the
just in the timeline of GCC. Yeah,
it's a 40-minute radio podcast from the
Oh, it's
BBC.
radio. Okay, it's difficult.
Yeah.
I like moving, but I also listen to Jim Rutt, the podcasts, some of them. I like the voice of Jim Rutt. It's nice. Okay, that's about it because I'm cooking some Brussels sprouts and then
My favorite.
with this.
Bon appetit.
Yeah, thank you. And I hope, and then I like the weather always, so because it's always changeable. So I'm leaving now. And
Okay, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Bye.
Ending the session. End for everybody.